Number 14. An unhinged killing spree. On October 6, 2019, a man identified as Andreas E. committed a series of cold-blooded murders, starting by shooting his 19-year-old former partner, Nadine Hinterholzer, and her new boyfriend, 24-year-old Florian Jani, while they were sleeping at Nadine's parents' home. He then went on to kill Nadine's parents, aged 51 and 59, as well as her 23-year-old brother. The incident unfolded after Andreas spotted Nadine and Florian together at a local restaurant. A few hours later, he entered their home and shot them in bed. During the trial, Andreas pleaded guilty to the charges. The guilty verdict is not legally binding as it can be appealed, although the jury was unanimous in reaching their decision. Despite his confession and apparent remorse, the judge deemed life imprisonment as the fitting sentence, considering the heinous nature of the crime. Andreas spoke at the trial, revealing a strange worldview and a conservative perspective on women and relationships. He could not accept that Nadine's life plans had changed and did not match his own. Despite her clear rejections, he refused to accept that the relationship was over, leading to his criminal behavior. Following the murders, Andreas drove to the Kitzbühel police station and turned himself in. He handed over the murder weapon to the officers, explaining that he had just committed the killings. His emotional state was evident during the confession, as he tearfully shared that he is haunted by the image of his crime every night, making it difficult for him to sleep. In a moment of remorse, Andreas expressed deep regret for his actions, stating that everything seemed to come together in a terrible way that night. He claimed to have experienced tunnel vision, feeling unable to control his actions during the fatal spree. Despite the remorse, he acknowledged that nobody deserved to be killed in such a way. According to a forensic psychiatry expert, Andreas showed no signs of mental or physical illness, making his actions even more shocking. The expert suggested that Andreas's upbringing lacked emotional intimacy, and he struggled to express or comprehend emotions, seeing things in black and white without any middle ground. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison. Number 13. A possessive husband. In August 2021, 29-year-old Russell Marsh was found guilty of murdering his 27-year-old estranged wife, Jade Ward. He disfigured the face of the mother of four with a knife and choked her to death while their children were sleeping in the next room. Marsh tried to cover up his crime by claiming that the death was accidental, stating that Ward had asked him to choke her during sex. Later, he changed his story, saying that she had hurt herself by mutilating her face and then teased him. But the court saw through his lies, and the judge of the Mold Crown Court described the case as nothing but a web of falsehoods and slurs. The incident unfolded after Marsh told Ward to leave their family home in North Wales in August 2021, saying that she no longer wanted him in her life. Days later, Marsh came back uninvited to the home as their four sons slept. He carried out the brutal murder of his wife, who admitted that he made her skin crawl. On that fateful night, Marsh armed himself with a knife from the kitchen and subjected Ward to a brutal assault in her bedroom. Afterwards, he drove the children to his parents' home near Chester and later turned himself into the police. Officers found Ward's body slashed, stabbed and strangled, hidden under a pile of clothes in a sealed room, secured with a dressing gown cord. During the trial, it was revealed that Marsh was paranoid and controlling. He was constantly calling and texting Ward when they were apart. He had tried to shape her into the person he wanted her to be. He even jokingly claimed that if he couldn't have her, no one could. Unfortunately, those words turned out to be true. The judge stressed the pain Ward must have endured during the attack, stating that it was a cowardly and brutal assault against a defenseless woman. The court learned that Marsh had lied about a supposed overdose incident to leave his overnight work shift and carry out the murder. In the end, Marsh was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Number 12. A stalker on the loose. On August 25, 2016, 19-year-old British teenager Shanna Grice was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend, 27-year-old Michael Lane. Michael had been stalking her persistently. The murder also exposed the failure of Sussex police to take Shanna's stalking complaint seriously. Shanna and Michael initially met while working together at Brighton Fire Alarms in 2015. They got into a relationship, but when Shanna decided to break up and reunite with her former boyfriend Ashley Cook, Michael became obsessed with her. He refused to accept the breakup and even made threats, claiming that she would pay for leaving him. After the breakup, Michael started stalking Shanna and placed a tracking device on her car to monitor her movements continuously. Shanna reported the stalking incidents to the police several times, including unwanted flowers and damage to her car. Despite her complaints, the police did not take the situation seriously and even fined Shanna for not disclosing her past relationship with Michael. He continued his stalking behavior, sneaking into her home, watching her while she slept, and making unsettling phone calls from blocked numbers. On the day of the murder, Michael entered Shanna's home while she was alone, slit her throat, and set her bedroom on fire, leading to her death. Shanna's parents and judge strongly criticized Sussex police for their handling of the case, because if they had taken her complaint seriously, she might still be alive. The court highlighted the police failure to recognize her vulnerability and risk of harm while in a sexual relationship with Michael. It was also revealed that Michael had been accused of stalking and harassing 13 other women, raising concerns about how these complaints were handled in the years leading up to Shanna's murder. Michael was arrested and eventually admitted to stalking Shanna, but denied murdering her. During the trial in 2017, he was found guilty of murder and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years. What would you do if an ex would not leave you alone? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 11. A fatal self-defense. On November 5th, 2021, a 39-year-old man from Texas, William Kyle Carruth, found himself in a deadly fight in Lubbock, where he shot and killed 54-year-old Chad Reed, his girlfriend's ex-husband. The confrontation happened during a heated argument over child custody between Carruth and Reed. They were at Carruth's property at the time, and his lawyer argued that the shooting was an act of self-defense. After a thorough investigation and presentation of evidence to a special grand jury, the Texas Attorney General announced that Carruth would not face criminal charges for the shooting. They unanimously concluded that the shooting was justified under self-defense laws. Before the event, Reed was in a custody dispute with his ex-wife Christina, who was dating Carruth. Jennifer Reed, Chad's new wife, filmed the fight and the moment Carruth shot and killed her husband. Carruth demanded Reed leave his property, and when Reed did not back down, Carruth fired shots, resulting in Reed's tragic death. Christina plans to pursue a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit in civil court, believing that the criminal justice system failed to hold Carruth accountable. Carruth's ex-wife, Judge Anne Marie Carruth, divorced him soon after the shooting. The incident shocked the community, and the Lubbock County District's Attorney Office removed itself from the case due to Carruth's relationship with Judge Anne Marie. Despite the grand jury's decision, Jennifer's lawyer was disappointed with the outcome, saying that Carruth had no real reason to bring a gun to the argument. He believes that Reed's death could have been avoided and that the civil case will now be pursued aggressively. Jennifer accused Christina and Carruth of conspiring to kill her husband, claiming that Reed had evidence of their affair and was planning to make it public. She suggested that the shooting was on purpose. Despite the controversy surrounding the case, the special grand jury decided not to imprison Carruth on any criminal charges, asserting that the shooting was indeed in self-defense. Number 10. Racism uncovered. On May 16, 2016, in Ohio, a 24-year-old man named Earl Jones fatally shot his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, 19-year-old Kevin Neri, who was of mixed race. Jones claimed that he acted in self-defense and that the shooting took place just before a planned fistfight between him and Neri. He denied that the incident was racially motivated, despite accusations from activists suggesting otherwise. The roots of the conflict go back several months, as Jones had been harboring resentment over his ex-girlfriend, 21-year-old Sierra Prather, dating a black man. Jones and Prather have a child together, who Prather had when she was just 16 years old. According to Neri's friends, Jones had repeatedly used racial slurs to refer to Prather's new boyfriend in text message exchanges. The tension escalated further when Jones posted a provocative photo of Prather on social media. On the day of the fatal incident, Jones went to Prather's home to pick up their 4-year-old child and settle his dispute with Neri. Witnesses reported that as Neri was talking to Prather outside her home in Coleraine Township, Jones arrived in his car, pulled out a .38 caliber revolver, and shot Neri 3 times before driving away. Prather's mother, who was present at the time, tried to help Neri, but he succumbed to his injuries and died on the spot. Jones called 911 from his car and claimed that he had killed Neri in self-defense. He then turned himself in at a nearby Hamilton County Sheriff's Station. The Black Lives Matter group took an interest in Neri's case, depicting him as a victim of a racially motivated crime on social media. Jones's defense attorney, Bill Gallagher, argued that the text messages featuring racial slurs should not be taken as evidence of racism. He maintained that the case revolved around self-defense and stressed that Jones has African-American relatives and is not racist. In the end, Jones was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Number 9. A well-planned murder. In October 2021, an 18-year-old man from Arizona was arrested for kidnapping and killing his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. The suspect, Jerson Perez, is facing several serious charges, including first-degree premeditated murder, first-degree murder during a crime, kidnapping, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing a dead body. Phoenix police revealed that Perez used a gun to force 19-year-old Oscar Ortega into his vehicle. Ortega was killed during the kidnapping, but he managed to send a text to his girlfriend about the kidnapping before Perez took away his phone and fatally shot him. Perez then dumped Ortega's body in a nearby desert. Perez's family played a crucial role in his arrest, as they told the police about his confession to killing Ortega and handed over a gun. The suspect later confessed to the police and guided them to the location where he had left the victim's body. According to investigators, Perez had been planning the kidnapping and murder for about a month. He waited outside his ex-girlfriend's home for her current boyfriend Ortega to leave before carrying out the brutal crime. His lawyer argued for a lower bond, citing Perez's cooperation with the investigators. The defense attorney stressed that Perez's family provided evidence to the state and did not try to hide anything. Also upon his arrest, Perez led the authorities to further evidence that could aid their case. Perez's lawyer revealed that her client had just turned 18 and had no prior criminal history or history of violence. Perez was taken into custody and is being held on a $1 million bond. As of now, he awaits his sentence. Number 8. Reunion gone wrong. In June 2014, a man killed his ex-wife and her new boyfriend in a fit of jealousy. 33-year-old Lori Moore was excited to attend her 15-year high school reunion with her new boyfriend, 36-year-old Lance Griffel. The reunion was held at Fifth Quarter Sports Bar and Pizzeria in East Peoria, where the class of 1999 had gathered. But the joyful event quickly turned into a nightmare around 8 p.m. Lori's ex-husband, 40-year-old Jason Moore, unexpectedly entered the bar and pulled out a gun. He calmly shot Lori and Lance in the head, causing chaos and panic among the reunion attendees. The bar patrons screamed and sought cover under tables as they feared the worst. Thankfully, an off-duty FBI agent, who happened to be at the bar, acted swiftly and shot Jason Moore in the head, neutralizing the threat and preventing further harm. Lori had filed for divorce from Jason in March of 2013, and their marriage was dissolved 2 months later. They had 2 children together, Caden and Callie. It is unclear what Jason's intentions were after shooting his ex-wife and her boyfriend, but police believe that if not for the quick action of the off-duty FBI agent, the situation could have escalated into an even bigger crime scene. When law enforcement got there, they interviewed over 100 witnesses to gather information about the incident. The patrons who witnessed the horrifying event were deeply shaken, and many had their faces covered, making it difficult for them to provide detailed statements. Jason was killed on the spot, so no further investigation could be carried out. Number 7. The merciless murder of an ex. On January 16, 2021, 33-year-old Claire Nash was brutally murdered by her jealous ex-boyfriend, 29-year-old Charles Jessop, at her doorstep. On the evening of the murder, Charles took a knife and made his way to Claire's flat in Newmarket, Suffolk. Their relationship had already ended, and Claire had started seeing another man. This unfortunately fueled Charles's jealousy and anger, setting the stage for a terrifying revenge attack. Hours before the attack, Claire, a mother of 2, had sought help from the police, expressing her fears about Charles. The authorities assessed the risk he posed as medium, but they could not prevent the horrifying events that followed. During his arrest minutes after the attack, Charles said that he had won. The court heard how Charles had been lying in wait for Claire's return home, and as soon as she arrived, he launched a brutal stabbing attack. When the knife broke, he did not let go. Instead, he resorted to strangling her, leading to her tragic death. The attack was driven by Charles's refusal to accept Claire's rejection and her new relationship. The prosecutor described the assault as premeditated, vicious, and cowardly. Adding to the horror, Claire's friend and housemate, Peter Claringbold, was inside the flat during the attack. Claire's 3-year-old son was also present during the ordeal. Peter tried to protect the young child and immediately called emergency services while the struggle continued in the bathroom, where Charles was overheard threatening Claire's life. During the attack, Claire made a desperate plea, falsely claiming that she was pregnant, hoping it might deter her attacker. But Charles mocked her for this, imitating her plea as he was arrested. The post-mortem examination later revealed that Claire was not pregnant, and the cause of her death was confirmed to be a combination of strangulation and blood loss. In a deeply disturbing incident 2 days before the attack, Charles had openly expressed his violent intentions in a pub, stating that he would slit Claire's throat because if he could not have her, no one would. He even declared that he would accept going to prison for it. Charles and Claire began their relationship in the latter part of 2019, but it had come to an end by Christmas of that year. According to the prosecution, there were numerous violent incidents as the relationship between them began to deteriorate. By the start of the new year, Claire had entered into a relationship with George Petrie, also known as Barry. But Charles was fixated on Claire and bombarded her with phone calls, sending 95 texts on Christmas Day in 2019, followed by an additional 174 texts over the next 4 days. These messages were disturbing, as they contained threats of self-harm if Claire refused to meet him. Learning about Claire's new relationship further fueled Charles's jealousy, causing him to become consumed with rage. Hours before the attack, Claire had contacted the police about Charles, but she decided against making a formal statement, even though she did provide an officer with a recording of one of Charles's threatening phone calls. Charles's defense involved raising questions about his mental state at the time of the killing, suggesting that the antidepressant drug citalopram may have affected him. During interviews after his arrest, Charles mentioned suffering from anxiety and fearing he might be schizophrenic. But a psychiatrist's evaluation ruled out schizophrenia and instead identified a form of personality disorder, which the prosecution argues does not excuse the killing. In July 2021, he was found guilty of Claire's murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 25 years. Do you think Charles's sentence is justified for how horrifying this crime was? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. No hint of remorse. On June 16, 2022, Franklin McLeod, a 55-year-old man, fatally stabbed his partner, 53-year-old Marlene Coleman, during a jealous outburst in their shared flat in Lewisham, southeast London. Both McLeod and Coleman were originally from Jamaica and had been in a relationship for over a decade. Coleman, who was one of the first female train dispatchers for Eurostar, had been unhappy in the relationship and wanted to end it, but McLeod refused to leave. In June, McLeod found voice notes from a man named Kevin Williams on his partner's WhatsApp, leading to an argument between the couple. Williams, who lived in Jamaica, had a close friendship with Coleman, and she had been helping him financially to build a house there. In a fit of rage, McLeod confronted Coleman about the messages and fatally stabbed her during the heated dispute. Instead of asking for help, he chose not to call an ambulance and went to a nearby police station to report the incident, falsely blaming an unknown attacker. While trying to defend himself during the trial, McLeod's barrister likened him to Dr. Richard Kimball, the character played by Harrison Ford in the movie The Fugitive, who is wrongfully accused of his wife's murder. The court heard details of the incident, where McLeod admitted to finding incriminating messages on his partner's unlocked phone and trying to send them to his phone as evidence. But he deleted the messages before Coleman could see them. A confrontation occurred when he asked her about the messages, and the argument escalated, leading to the crime. During the trial, McLeod claimed that both he and Coleman were angry during the fight. He denied stabbing or murdering her, asserting that he only put his hands on her to calm her down. According to his statement to the police, he said that she fell to the ground after he touched her neck, but he insisted he did not use any force or pushed her. McLeod further told the police that he left the house to cool off his head and left Coleman alive and conscious. He recalled a conversation between them before he left, with her being unsurprised about his behavior, to which he replied in a similar vein. He mentioned the other man, Williams, stating that he might be her builder or fiancé, meaning someone she was seeing other than him. The prosecutor's case revolved around McLeod's possessiveness and jealousy towards Coleman, as well as his discovery of the voice notes from the other man that angered him. The prosecution contended that McLeod was responsible for stabbing Coleman in the neck that night. Despite his attempts to blame a mystery attacker, the jury found him guilty of murder. Detectives described McLeod as a man who murdered Coleman out of rage and spite after learning she planned to leave him. The investigation involved extensive efforts, including deployments to Jamaica to secure crucial witness evidence and international cooperation with authorities. After the trial, McLeod was found guilty of the murder charge by an Old Bailey jury. The sentencing judge, Angela Rafferty, said that McLeod intended to kill Coleman and left her to die without any help or comfort. The murder was considered even more dangerous because McLeod used a knife to target her neck, and she died in her own home. Despite the lack of evidence of physical abuse, the judge concluded that McLeod had tried to control Coleman, and she expressed her concerns about this to at least one person. In the end, despite McLeod's denial of the murder charge, the jury convicted him. During the sentencing, McLeod showed no emotion as he received a life imprisonment sentence with a minimum term of 20 years before he can be considered for parole. Number 5. Stabbed in the back. In July 2023, at the White Lodge Shooting School in the Lincolnshire village of Thornton Curtis, a 69-year-old woman, Rose Jobson, was fatally shot by her 84-year-old estranged husband, Robert Jobson. The shooting took place at around 7 a.m. Robert killed Rose and then himself. The couple had run the shooting school together for over 3 decades. Rose had recently started a romantic relationship with one of Robert's closest friends, Pete Hrinick. The two had known each other for at least 35 years, having met at the shooting school in the 1990s. They had grown increasingly close over the last 6 months and even went on a holiday together to Tenerife a few weeks before the incident. Robert had moved out of their marital home after learning about Rose's relationship with Pete. He felt betrayed and jealous, as he had considered Pete a good friend. The situation had caused tension between them, and Robert expressed feeling stabbed in the back by Pete. The police believe that Robert managed to get a shotgun despite having all his firearms taken away previously due to threatening behavior towards Rose. Humberside police confirm that Robert had a history of domestic abuse and was known to them. Rose's other passion in life was dancing, and she was known for her love of colorful dresses and had a warm and friendly personality. White Lodge Shooting School, which Rose and Robert had purchased in 1991, catered to various events and offered one-on-one coaching, but the school closed suddenly 6 weeks before the tragedy due to personal injury. Rose's family and friends remember her as a loving and caring person who will be deeply missed. Her death left a void in the lives of those who knew her, especially in the dancing community where she was celebrated. Number 4. A bad cover-up. On November 9, 2021, Camille Ranosek, a 42-year-old chicken factory worker, murdered his estranged partner, 27-year-old Ilona Golubec. The incident took place in their shared home in Boston, Lincolnshire. It all began when Ranosek discovered that Golubec had been talking to other men on Tinder, and his revelation sent him into a jealous rage. In a violent outburst, while their 3-year-old daughter was asleep, he used a hammer to strike Golubec at least 7 times on the head, inflicting several skull fractures and brain injuries. He then proceeded to dismember her body, demonstrating his butchery skills, and cut it into at least 15 pieces. While trying to cover up his crime, Ranosek hid some of Golubec's remains under the flat they once shared, particularly in the bathroom which their daughter would have used. He then cycled to Whittam Way Country Park in Boston, where he disposed of the rest of her remains, wrapping them in bin liners and placing them in carrier bags. Afterward, Ranosek went to a police station to report Golubec missing, trying to give the impression that he was concerned about her disappearance. But the police later found evidence of his lies and deceit, as he had been contacting Golubec's friends and ringing her mobile to make it look like he was trying to find her. Golubec's body was left to decompose until it was finally discovered 3 months later in Whittam Way Country Park. Golubec had been determined to end the relationship with Ranosek and had given him 2 weeks to leave. She had started interacting with other men on Tinder and even planned to meet someone for a drink. During the missing persons inquiry, police discovered jars containing fabric stained with what seemed like blood, hiding in a cupboard at their home. Despite not finding Golubec's complete body, the authorities launched a murder inquiry, leading to Ranosek's arrest and subsequent charges. The horrific nature of this crime was evident throughout the trial. Ranosek's calculated and cold behavior after committing the brutal murder further illustrated the gravity of his actions. The court, recognizing the clear intent to kill, sentenced him to life in prison. Number 3. The Jealous Man with a Plan. On January 27, 2020, 53-year-old Andrew Jones murdered 55-year-old Mike O'Leary, who was involved in an affair with Jones's wife, 51-year-old Rhiannon. The incident happened at a remote farm where Jones lured O'Leary under the guise of Rhiannon, using her phone to deceive him. Jones used a .22 caliber Colt rifle to shoot O'Leary. Afterwards, he tried to make it look like O'Leary did it himself by leaving his car by a river and escaping on a bicycle. Jones, who was a businessman in the building and farming industry, admitted to the court that O'Leary's death was not intentional and that it happened accidentally during a struggle. Jones claimed that he found a secret phone belonging to his wife while she was ill and used it to message O'Leary, arranging a meeting with him. According to Jones, during their confrontation at a remote farm, both men became upset and he wanted to frighten O'Leary by carrying a rifle. Jones admitted that he fired 2 or 3 shots into the ground to scare him. However, a scuffle between the 2 men ensued, resulting in the fatal shot that went through O'Leary's chin. Jones stated that he did not know who caused the firearm to discharge, implying that it could have been accidental. O'Leary died immediately, and Jones, in a state of panic, moved the body and the car and sent text messages to O'Leary's family. He then transported O'Leary's body back to his home, where he burned it over several days in a series of intense fires in his building yard. He described using cardboard and papers to fuel the fire and used electric fans to hasten the burning process. He even took an old funeral order of service to recite a reading as the body burned. The trial revealed that Jones kept adding fuel to the fire for about 4.5 hours. The prosecution argued that this was not a panicked reaction, but rather a carefully planned and calculated murder. According to the prosecution's version of events, Jones planned the murder carefully, pretending to be Rhiannon to lure O'Leary to the secluded farm, where he shot him dead with the rifle. After that, he used a forklift truck to place the body in the trunk of his Audi A6 and transported it to his home where he burned it. They stressed that this was not a tragic accident, but a pre-planned murder. Jones had a clear intent to kill O'Leary from the start of the plan until the shooting took place. During the trial at Swansea Crown Court, it was revealed that Jones, living in Bronwood, Carmarthen, had a collection of 8 guns at his home, one of which was allegedly used to shoot O'Leary. Police discovered that the .22 Colt rifle had traces of O'Leary's blood on it, further implicating Jones in the crime. The prosecution established that Jones killed O'Leary after discovering his affair with Rhiannon. The affair had begun in 2019 when both people attended the same gym. Messages between O'Leary and Rhiannon were described as intimate and graphic in content, leading to Jones becoming aware of the affair after reading messages on his wife's iPad. Jones denied the charge of murder, but by October 2020, he was found guilty and was jailed for life with a minimum sentence of 30 years. Number 2. The Fatal Aftercare. On April 12, 2021, a 35-year-old jealous boyfriend, Carl Chadwick, brutally murdered his partner, 26-year-old Sarah Keith, just moments after they had sex. The court heard that Chadwick, under the influence of alcohol and drugs, strangled Keith with a dressing gown cord and stabbed her in the heart as an act of revenge, believing she had cheated on him while he was in prison. On the night of the murder, both Chadwick and Keith were intoxicated. After they returned home, Chadwick viewed explicit material on his phone and initiated sexual activity with Keith. As they moved from the bedroom to the living room, he concealed a dressing gown cord behind his back, already intending to kill her. As Keith got up from the floor, Chadwick quickly wrapped the cord around her neck and strangled her, taking her off guard and preventing any resistance. To ensure her death, he retrieved a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her heart 5 times. Shockingly, the post-mortem examination revealed that she was still alive when he carried out the stabbing. After the attack, Chadwick covered her body with a curtain, watched pornography, and consumed cocaine. After his crime, Chadwick initially planned to flee, but he spent several hours roaming around Leeds before surrendering himself to the West Yorkshire Police. Jonathan Sharp, the prosecutor, revealed that Chadwick had a history of drug and alcohol abuse and had developed a fixation that Keith had been unfaithful to him. This belief led him to contemplate killing her frequently, with thoughts plaguing him several times a week. The murder occurred after the couple spent an afternoon and evening drinking at a pub. After closing time, they continued their drinking spree at a friend's house before heading to Keith's flat at around 1 a.m. During the day, Chadwick had 6 or 7 pints of alcohol and multiple double whiskeys. It's unclear whether Keith had been unfaithful to Chadwick, as the court did not receive information either way. The court heard that Chadwick had been controlling and violent towards Keith throughout their 4-year relationship. In court, Chadwick pleaded guilty to murder, but he denied that there was a sexual motive behind the killing. During the trial, Chadwick gave evidence and expressed remorse for his actions. He acknowledged that he loved Keith and apologized for what he had done. The court learned that Chadwick's violent and controlling behavior had been known to Keith's family, who initially thought he was a nice bloke. They were devastated over the loss of their daughter, emphasizing the lifelong impact of his actions on their lives. Jailing the culprit, Judge Jeffrey Marson QC condemned Chadwick for destroying the life of someone they loved and valued so deeply. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 25 years. Number 1. Jealousy kill. On July 27, 2020, a woman from Georgia planned and participated in a plot to kidnap and murder her love rival. 30-year-old Demetria Johnson was arrested in Alabama for murdering 39-year-old Tamika Skinner, who was dating the father of Demetria's children. 3 men, including 40-year-old Sean Johnson, 30-year-old Joshua Tolbert, and 23-year-old Javon Phillips, were also arrested and charged with helping Demetria carry out the deadly plan. According to the Russell County Sheriff, Demetria was motivated by jealousy, as Tamika was dating her ex-boyfriend and father of her children, Martia Petway. Tensions escalated when Tamika questioned Demetria's parenting skills to Petway. According to the authorities, the 2 love rivals had some prior issues. The assault and kidnapping occurred at a home in Columbus, Georgia, where Skinner and Petway were house-sitting. Petway was injured during the assault but left at the apartment complex. Meanwhile, Skinner was forcibly taken from the home, with her kidnappers stealing her vehicle. Petway called 911 to report the incident, and investigators were alerted about Skinner's car possibly being in Alabama. While heading to find the vehicle, they noticed a suspicious car and started a high-speed chase, leading to the arrest of Demetria and the 3 accomplices. Skinner's body was later found in a wooded area in Russell County. Her car was found a few miles away, and it appeared that the suspects had tried to burn and conceal it but failed. A handgun was recovered from the wrecked vehicle, suspected to have been used in the murder. The authorities believed that Demetria had been planning the murder for at least a week. The 4 suspects are being held at the Russell County Detention Facility and are expected to appear before a judge. As of now, they await their sentence. Which of these murders make you scared to get into relationships? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.